Dead Snow movies are kind of fascinating. They have an absolutely bonkers premise. A group of medical students are having a get-together at a remote cabin when suddenly a platoon of Nazi zombies are entering the scene looking for their gold and starting to murder everyone in their way. A pretty fun premise for a splatter comedy, right? Right? But the first one, well, in my opinion it's actually not that good, to be honest. The jokes unfortunately aren't that funny. It's not that the jokes themselves are bad, they could be funny, it's just as if every scene is just a few seconds too long. The execution is a problem in general though. There's one pretty funny joke though. The camera feels like it's just too close to the action at all times, which makes the whole thing feel a bit cheap. It actually looks like they digitally zoomed in the entire movie. But it's not only the visuals that feel off here. The story itself is pretty weird. While the premise sounds simple enough, it just feels odd how it is executed. For way too long, nothing of consequence is happening. Just a bunch of really dumb characters making dumb jokes for a while. When the zombies finally attack, at least there is some good splatter. But a good horror comedy needs interesting and likable characters. This is unfortunately not the case here. There is a chubby horror nerd who should probably be the goat or advisor for the others, but he is just kind of disgusting and dies pretty early on. Then there are a couple of women. I can only remember the main character's girlfriend though. Then there's the main character who's probably the dumbest character of the bunch, and his friend who... I don't even know what he did except for killing a couple of zombies later on. He's just kind of there. These characters are all really, really dumb, to the point that you wonder how they could even survive that long, even without the zombies around. There's also another guy in the group who looks for help and returns with a machine gun at some point. There isn't much going on. Zombies and Norwegians get killed. We learn that these aren't Romero zombies, but more like the old classic zombies. I think they are supposed to be Draugr or whatever it's called. Some of them die, but they are revived by their leader Herzog at some point. It's not great, but it's also not terrible. But for what it is, it could have been much more. Could have been more action-packed, more violent, funnier, better made, but it's just kind of fine. You can have fun with it, but it's nothing that great, and Dead Snow will get a 6 out of 10. But only barely. It's very close to a 5. Only a couple of good kills slightly push it to the 6. It's still better than Sky Sharks though. So the sequel most likely wouldn't improve on this, right? It most likely is even worse, right?
Wrong.
Dead Snow 2 Red vs. Dead is actually a huge step up in every aspect. The movie has a pitch black sense of humor. It's better made, it's better shot, the effects have improved, which weren't too bad in the first one already, but here they are even gnarlier. The story is also a huge step up. Dead Snow 2 continues where the first one left off. It follows the sole survivor of the massacre from the first movie, who has escaped but had an accident because of Herzog, and he ends up losing his arm. Unfortunately, or fortunately as we learn, he gets Herzog's arm attached instead of his own. At first the arm is uncontrollable and kills people, as Martin is suspected to be the murderer of his friends, and another killing is witnessed by his deranged arm, and he attacks a couple of cops. That of course doesn't help. He manages to escape the hospital and the cop through the super strength of his arm though, and starts to research Herzog's weaknesses and calls some American zombie hunters, which are hilarious. Together they also learn that a group of dead Soviet soldiers which were executed by Herzog and his men are nearby, and Martin can resurrect the dead with his arm, as they learn with this poor bastard. So they try to get some backup against Herzog and let the undead fight each other. While doing so, the Nazi zombies also attack villages on their way and recruit new undead. It all leads to a rather epic battle for a splatter comedy, which also includes a tank. This is just so much better. The Americans are really funny, even though I didn't need that one girl making Star Wars references all the time. There's also a flamboyant museum worker, and Martin resurrects an undead several times, who just gets mangled over and over the course of the film. I like basically all characters in the movie, and almost everyone who is seen on screen is made interesting in some way, even the extras. For example, there is a new character on the Nazi zombie side, a doctor, who is pretty bad at his job, but it's good enough for the undead, I guess, which is a really funny idea. Even Martin is more likable here, and while he still is a bit of a buffoon, it just feels more natural here, and not as stupid as in the first one. It feels more natural here as he is in a pretty unique and extreme situation. He's also not quite as stupid as in the first one, I would say. There's a lot of action in the movie, it's well paced and bloody as hell. The comedy often uses quick, kind of shocking moments, which make you say, oh no, they didn't go that far, did they? But they actually do. Despite being so dark, it's pretty funny though, even as you see some kids and an old granny get killed. But it's so quick and over the top that it doesn't feel too mean-spirited. Also, when something happens to kids, it's not shown on screen actually, which takes a bit away from the effect, but also makes it more surprising and kind of funny. It's overall just a good and fun watch. They also end the movie with a good song and a scene which, if I would describe it now, would probably sound very wrong. But it's pretty funny and almost sweet when it happens. So I let the interested viewer just find it out by him or herself. Don't expect a masterpiece though. This is just a very well made splatter comedy. At least I did like it quite a bit, and when looking at the IMDb rating or the likes I see on my letterboxd reviews of these two movies, I think I'm not alone. And That's Not True gets a well-deserved 8 out of 10. And it's also so much better than Sky Shark. With all that said, I have to stress that it isn't for the faint of heart. These are very violent and bloody movies, with tons of gore and black comedy. This was also made by the guy who would go on to make Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, which I personally didn't care for, but it was quite popular when it came out, at least with audiences. He also made What Happened to Monday and Violent Night, which both look okay, but I haven't seen either one yet. But I guess this Christmas I will watch Violent Night. I would also watch another Dead Snow movie, if it would be produced, especially after how much I enjoyed the second one. I think there were even talks about a third one, and if the director Tommy Wirkola would like to make another one, he would probably be able to do so. He does switch between Hollywood and Norway frequently. But even if this will never be a trilogy, which is likely after all the time which has passed, I would be okay with it. The second movie has a pretty great ending after all, and the story is more or less complete. It doesn't really need anything more to explore.